Hey guys, it's Sam and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Today I am doing a Halloween DIY video. If you saw my last video, I did kind of hint that I was gonna do this, or at least attempt to do it. So that's what this video is. We are remaking the Pottery Barn Ghost the Gus pillow. This pillow I'm pretty sure retails for like $85, and I've always wanted it ever since it came out, but I knew I was not going to pay that price for a decorative pillow. So pretty much I'm going to show you how to make it yourself, and I'm going to show you mine. This is mine. He's, I think, a lot bigger than the Pottery Barn one, but I still love him. He's so cute. He's really soft and squishy and cozy. He's holding the pumpkin, and I don't know how much in total it cost me to make this, but I will have a breakdown of that somewhere in this video as well as in the description. So it's definitely a lot cheaper to do yourself. There is a little bit of sewing involved. It's not that hard, I promise guys. I don't even know how to sew. I literally just somehow did this, and this is the outcome. And I love him so much. I think he is so adorable. So let's go ahead and jump into this tutorial. So the first thing you want to do is grab your pillowcase. I got these from the dollar store, and I ended up only using one for two ghosts, one small one, one big one. The one I'm making now is smaller, and I'm just kind of mentally marking how big the other one was, how big I want this one to be, and then I will take my Sharpie and mark where I will cut the ghost little body out. So if you make a mistake, don't worry, I also made a mistake. So once I made this little outline, I realized I wanted it to be a bit taller where his head will be. So I just went back in and made that correction. And then right outside of the black line, I am just cutting the shape out. You don't want to cut directly on the black line because it will end up being smaller than you expect once we are done sewing and stuffing. So that is what the little ghost body shape should look like. So then I'm heading over to the sewing machine to backstitch and stitch up the ghost. You don't want to stitch it up all the way because we will have to stuff it. So do about 3/4 of the way, leaving a little gap where you can place the stuffing in. If you don't have a sewing machine and you are good at sewing by hand, you can definitely sew this by hand. I just had a sewing machine on deck at my parents', so I decided to quicken up the process. Since I was making more than one, I would go ahead and use the sewing machine. When you are doing this, make sure you don't get too close to the edge of the fabric. I accidentally did that when I was rounding off the top of his head and had to go back in and hand sew the top of the ghost's head just because the stuffing was about to come out of it. So don't make my mistake, just don't get too close to the edge and you will be fine. And then I'm just back stitching it, pulling it out from the machine and cutting the thread so we can move on to the stuffing part. So once you are done with that, you are going to flip the little pillowcase inside out to begin stuffing it, which I feel like is pretty self-explanatory. You can stuff it as much as you would like. I did find with the bigger one that I made, I didn't like how stuffed it was, so I did use less material for this one, and I feel like I liked how this one turned out better than the other one that you've already seen. So just keep that in mind. It's really dependent on what you like, but before you sew it up, you can kind of tell how it's going to look. So and once you are done, you're just going to hand sew the little gap that we left open. So you just want to sew that up. I did it by hand, and I think it was easier to do by hand. The first time I did it, I tried to do it with the sewing machine, and it just did not turn out. So I do recommend doing this part by hand if possible.
And then I'm just taking the ends of the thread and tying that up. I think I learned a long time ago in middle school to do it like 2 to 3 times, but I do it like 5 times just to be extra cautious. Then we're moving on to the fabric. So I did purchase 1 yard of fabric, but for one small ghost, you really only need half a yard. So feel free to make 2 small ones with a 1 yard piece of fabric. And I got this from Joann's. And then I'm just taking my black felt with a Sharpie and cutting out an oval shape for his eye. And then you will obviously need 2 if you want your ghost to have 2 eyes. So I just take the one that I've already cut out, I lay it over top of another piece of the black felt, and then I just cut around it so I can ensure it's the same size. If you want to trace something and you have an oval shape to trace, feel free to do that if you want it to be perfect. But I kind of find like once you put it sewn into the fabric, even if it's not perfect, it still looks really good. So then I'm just making sure I have the correct shape and length of fabric for this ghost. The front portion of the ghost, you want the fabric to just basically lay flush with a table or chair, wherever you plan to sit it on. You don't want it to be too long, so just keep that in mind. And then I'm going to pin the eyes on where I want them to be before I hand sew those as well. And then I just took the little body pillow out to make it easier. And then I laid the fabric on a table to hand sew the eyes on, and I think that made the process a lot easier. So just hand sew both eyes on and you will almost be done. So now I am just pinning the little folds of the fabric over to kind of give him some ghost hands so he can hold the pumpkin. So just kind of shape it how you want, then pin it in place and then begin sewing. And I just sewed it a few times just to hold the fabric in place, but it doesn't need a lot, so. And now it's time for the pumpkin. This little pumpkin decor piece was from Hobby Lobby, and I think it was $1.99. I'm just cutting the stem off, placing it where I think he should hold it, and then you can pin it that way. But I went straight into sewing. This part is gonna be the probably more difficult part of the entire process because the pumpkin is heavy, and you are just going to sew it onto the fabric. You can even sew it onto the pillow if you never want to remove the decorative part from the pillow. That would be fine as well, and that would make it a bit more sturdy. But I didn't do that, but I do recommend it if you have trouble. And then I also recommend, which I didn't show but I did do, is just sewing some white thread on the top of his head to hold it all in place. And there you go, that is your Gus the Ghost pillow.
Alright you guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you attempt to make one of these. Like I said, it's not that hard. It just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of sewing, and that's pretty much it. If you don't want to sew, you could always use fabric glue. However, if you want it to last a bit longer, I would recommend going and sewing it. So let me know if you guys try this out. If you do, post a picture and tag me. I definitely want to see it. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye guys.